I want to leave Nigel Farage aside just for a moment, but I do want to hear your thoughts on all of that. Can we talk first of all about the announcement from the Tories, just very briefly? This front page story, this 10 days to save Britain from this disaster of a Labour supermajority, this idea of giving Starmer unchecked power, this idea that some of these mega polls are saying they can have a majority of, 4,000 in a 650 parliament. Does any of that have any validity? Because there's lots of talk about how this would be a dictatorship. But I mean, if the Tories lose that many voters, well, that's on them, isn't it?
Well, it concerns me, and the other story in today's papers is exactly why, which is when Labour feels comfortable as to its unchecked, untrammelled power, it is going to pursue madder and madder ideas that we all, I think, know and suspect that deep down they hold. And this is what I think...
Like the gender self-ID stuff.
The trans story, which is just mental, that you're going to have a situation by which a prisoner, let's take a prisoner that's in there for an 8-year spell, oh well, he's decided on day one that he's going to start living as a woman. Well, you've done 2 years now, you've done your cooling off period, so off you go down to the women's prison, despite having been convicted of heinous
Well, because you now have a
offences.
certificate saying you are legally a woman. Your birth certificate, your passport, your driving licence, not much use to you behind bars, but nevertheless, those things will all say legally you were and have always been a woman. A complete lie. And it's a lie.
A total nonsense. And the other change they're proposing is to go from 2 doctors having to sign it off to just 1 doctor, no matter how crazy, no matter how radical. And I'm almost like, well, why bother? We saw with the Tavistock Clinic, you can get a bunch of doctors to sign off on this more than easily enough. You just get a cluster of doctors who are prepared to certify that all of a
who were
sudden...
signed up to the ideology.
5 autistic girls in the same class at school were all mysteriously also trans and had been at birth, and they were misassigned, assigned their gender at birth. It's a nonsense, it's dangerous. And I do worry that if the Labour majority grows to that massive monumental scale, that the scales will fall just a little bit to, the mask will slip just a little bit faster. I am deeply, deeply concerned. Now, on the other hand, it might mean that the Labour government comes crumbling down all in one term, and from my perspective that would be a very good thing.
I just don't think look, they're going to have a majority according to the polls. I mean, again, things could happen. Voters have a funny way of doing their own thing. We're not talking about anything marginal here. We're looking at the polls would have to literally, pollsters should all just leave the country in shame if everything is that wrong. However, it is a simple matter of likelihood now probably that Labour are going to win with a good-sized majority, whatever it is. Does it make a blind bit of difference whether it's a majority of 60 or a majority of 200? If they want to push stuff through, they can push stuff through. And this is why I'm so angry with the Tories over various things like this. These are supposedly not party political issues. Is that they'll say, oh, they're turning... I mean, you've even got quotes from, some of these articles today, Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, warned that Labour would play politics with the lives of our children, dropping guidance, banning schools from teaching gender ideology is also part of this, being suggested by Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary. But the Tories totally failed to stop this for the last 14 years. And when they knew it was a big issue, they didn't legislate on it they didn't start any action on it until we were heading towards an election. This is on them.
Yeah, let me be clear. I never, ever want to hear anything out of the mouth of Gillian Keegan about this issue. This is a minister who, in government, repeatedly blocked attempts to toughen up exactly this policy. The sheer chutzpah for her to come out now and attack Labour. Look, she might have a point, right? But in my personal opinion, she should leave it to those like Kemi Badenoch who were in government,
and are totally sound on this stuff,
who were doing it. She should say nothing of the sort, and she'd do everyone a favour if she shut up and returned to fighting for her seat, which is looking in real jeopardy.
Let's not go into any individual seats, please. But I mean, this is the thing. Part of this would be banning. There was this idea, guidance, not in law again, because the Tories deliberately did it too late. I think it was a deliberate policy, banning schools from teaching gender ideology. Now, that's not talking about, again, no one's being cruel to somebody who's confused, but here's the thing, just because someone on YouTube is saying you're born in the wrong body doesn't mean it's actually real. Schools should be teaching facts. They should be saying nobody is born in the wrong body, there are only 2 genders, these are biological facts. Now, that should be controversial, and I'm of the view any teacher who thinks that is controversial, that's not the same as like section 28 and don't say gay or anything like that. We'll talk, people are gay. Okay, people are gay. But people are not born in the wrong body. These are two completely different things. And being in the same way, I mean, again, in the same way that someone says, I think I've got two legs when I should only have one. And there are people who genuinely have that level of mental illness that they want one of their legs cut off. We don't go, no, you're quite right. You're absolutely right. You should only have one leg. We don't do that because that would be a weird and cruel and horrible thing to do. And yet we do this with children who have been told, indoctrinated, watched a million YouTube videos, all their friends, they're a bit confused, and then they believe that they believe the solution to all their problems is, I must be trans, I'm born in the wrong body, so now I'll take puberty blockers and have surgery.
Yeah, let's be clear. Telling children that this isn't the case isn't cruel. What is cruel is to lie to children, is to pump them full of life-altering, life-damaging hormones, to propose extraordinarily invasive surgery on children who are misinformed, who have been lied to. And the Labour Party knows this in many places. It has seen the cash review. It knows that this is not in children's interest. Yet they said they accepted the cash review. And I imagine they will keep saying they accept the cash review.
They don't really.
They don't really. This policy shows they don't accept it.
But you've got people like Dawn Butler, for goodness sake, a prominent Labour MP. Isn't she a shadow role of some sort? And she genuinely said on television, has never taken it back. Like, sorry, I was on drugs at the time. Which is the only explanation. She says that children are assigned sex about them. We get a lot of this in NHS documents as well. They're not born with a sex that we kind of go, oh look, that must be a boy. If you think that, I'm sorry, I don't think you should be allowed out of your home, let alone be running to, you should be running for a public office, running anything. I think that is genuinely a sign of being cray-cray. I mean, it's properly crazy. But, there we are. As you say, I'm concerned about this. I'm very concerned about this, whichever party is in charge of it. I think everyone has failed on this to date. However, you've got people like J.K. Rowling saying, I've given £1 million to Labour over the years as a donor. I've been staunch, but she stood up to Keir Starmer on this. She's tackled, the government on this. She has been a fantastic, heroine for so many women fighting to protect women and girls, safe spaces and the like. And she's saying she would struggle to vote Labour now. Do you think this will impact Labour vote? Because they seem to think there are more votes in being woke than there are in protecting women.
I think this might take a little bit of the puff, a little bit of the air out of Labour's numbers. I don't think this was quite the story that the Labour Party campaign had gridded, as we say in politics, for this weekend. I think this is probably being put out there by the Tory party machine, which seems to be finally waking up to the reality.
They've left the betting shop. We'll come on to that. Look, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch about this. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000 in particular. I'd love to hear from you on the phones in terms of this, teaching of gender ideology in school. It's only guidance at the moment from the Tories, and so it's not actually, it's only under consultation. They didn't do it soon enough. They've known about this problem for 4 years and done absolutely all about it. But gender self-ID being made even easier, I'd love to hear your thoughts, your concerns about that. Maybe you welcome it. Get in touch as well. But let's talk about the gambling issue, because the Gambling Watchdog has widened their inquiry into the Tory betting scandal. They are now looking into hundreds of suspicious bets, anything that basically was standing to win more than £199 in terms of a bet on the election date. They're now looking at, because it does appear that one of the people is yet unidentified who worked in number 10, or had linked to someone who worked in number 10, had placed bets, 10, 12 different bets in different places. But by definition, once you're doing that, at that point, you're clearly showing you think what you're doing is wrong. Now, there is a big debate in the Commons about whether or not it is actually illegal. It's actually a criminal offence. Now, it's different for the alleged placing of a bet by a close security protection officer, Rishi Sunak. They, Official Secrets Act, there are lots of the duty, as a police officer, hearing things, perhaps. Again, that's an allegation. Police are investigating. We don't know the outcome of that. That's very different from someone who's sitting in a meeting and being told we're going to have the election on the 4th of July and go, hello, give a call to the wife, a few friends, everyone puts some money on. That is quite clearly, whether or not illegal, is utterly inappropriate and unethical, is it not?
Well, I think that's right, and it's important to draw the distinction My suspicion is there won't be a single prosecution here, and look, we should compare it, to things like horse racing. People know that a horse is doing well or not. People will put extra money on.
Isn't there a difference between public information and insider information?
Well,
so if in a bank, for instance, you have insider information selling your shares when you know a company.
Well, this is why there is a very special.
There's
a very special regime for betting on the stock exchange, which practically is just betting, but there's a different regime for gambling. And I suspect the gambling industry itself doesn't want to open the door to fully shutting down anyone betting on the basis of private information. I mean, we've all known it. You've gone to a race course and someone said, "Oh, he's very good. I've heard from so and so that he's definitely going to be a runner." I've got a tip for
I'm not a bettor at all. So this
given the seriousness of the situation that the country is facing, given how grave it is, given how the Tory party was already going into election under this leader, expecting the drubbing of a lifetime for aides in and around him who are equally culpable in how bad this is all going, to have said, "I'm going to take time off giving dreadful advice to the Prime Minister to go and profit off the dreadful advice we've given him to call an earlier election."
Maybe they were with the Prime Minister. Oh no, this would have all happened before the election. When I was going to say all that time they had after coming back early from D-Day. This is my thing. It's the lack of good thinking, good advice, good strategic thinking, and just the lack of instinct about what is and what isn't. I in my position, say like election night, you get the exit poll. We don't get it like on the dot of 10 o'clock. We get it a little beforehand. You don't go and put a bet on it or give that information to anyone who's going to put a bet. You don't do that because it's unethical. Now, I'm not aware that there's any law stopping me doing it. You just don't do it.
Look, I should say, as someone that's already been in Westminster and in politics, that betting on politics is a way of life for people in politics. Everyone does it. And, everyone draws their own rules. And my personal view is I will only ever bet on the guy I'm working for to win. Right?
Yes.
It's, that's a decision for the electorate. And every single time I go and work on a campaign, I'll go and put 100 quid on my guy to win. And there is a difference. And you had this, of course, in football with the spot fixing issue, and it's different, I think, between as a football team betting on yourself to win on the basis that you've got inside information that you're going to do really well. I think that's probably fine. What's not fine is to bet on yourself to get a yellow card in the 60th minute, because that's the kind of thing you can fix. And the decision to call an election, that's not down to the electorate, that was just down to Rishi Sunak, and that makes it a different thing.
Just terrible misjudgment. But looking at some of these debates, we've got, of course, the Sun debate tonight. Interaction on questions from the Sun readers, which I'm very much looking forward to, from 5:30 on the Sun YouTube page. But I do just think it is extraordinary. Just the lack of the lack of fight in the Prime Minister now. You can the man has given up already. His worst case scenario right now isn't a thumping Labour majority. His worst case scenario is a thumping Labour majority and he wins his seat. That's his worst case scenario, because he wants to go to California. It's all going to get very embarrassing.
Tory insiders have certainly said to me that every morning on these briefing campaign calls where the whole team comes together, the senior officials, the Prime Minister is at best monosyllabic. He's depressed.
You would be. But again, who thought it was a good idea to go early for a start? But there we are. Let's also talk about Nigel Farage. We're going to talk about this a little bit later with a chap I've had a number of clashes with. It's going to be quite lively, Jackson Hinkle. But Nigel Farage, the West should talk peace with Putin over Ukraine. He has said this is after huge amounts of criticism of him and including from me, I have to say, about his stance that basically, the EU were wrong and NATO were wrong to sort of approach, to try and get Ukraine to join the EU and NATO, and Putin was wrong to invade, but we gave him the reason to invade. I mean, look, we gave him the pretext. There's no doubt at all. He used that as his pretext to invade, that NATO was aggressive, was on his borders, etc., etc. But he didn't really need one. For me to say it's on one side, on the other side, I feel that Nigel Farage, I think he's wrong on this. I really, really do think he's wrong. Has he been, though, I suppose, misrepresented?
No, I don't think he has been misrepresented. I like Nigel. I agree with 90% at least of what he says.
And you support Conservatives as well.
I support the Conservatives. But on this, he is plain wrong. Let's just get one thing clear, right? The West didn't enlarge the EU into Eastern Europe, nor did it enlarge NATO. These countries, including Ukraine, asked to join, right? They chose to do it. There was nobody pushing them. There wasn't, we're going to take you in now. Ukraine made a decision that it wanted to join, principally, actually, the EU. Now, why on earth you'd want to join the EU is anyone's bet, right? I want to be as far away from it as possible. But they chose that. They said, look, in our situation, when you're a developing post-Soviet country that has been absolutely pillaged by Russia, let's not forget, for almost a century.
It's in our interest.
It's in our interest to join. We would like to join.
Yeah.
Now, Nigel Farage says that by saying yes to that we were preparing or giving grounds for an invasion of Russia via Ukraine. It is madness. It is nonsense. I don't know why Nigel indulges in this stuff. I think it's a mistake politically. I think it's wrong morally. I think it's absurd geopolitically. Nigel's gone very, very badly wrong, and he should take some advice and just leave it firmly be.
He was right though. As long ago as an MEP talking, he was one of the few politicians to say, look, we are heading to an invasion of Ukraine from Vladimir Putin on this pretext. He was correct in that. Most of these so-called Western experts didn't see the invasion coming even the day before.
Well, sure, and look, as far as I'm concerned, the Foreign Office has an abominable record here. But look, there's two reasons to say that there was an invasion coming. And by the way, I was saying that there was likely to be an invasion coming and that we were criminally unprepared.
Well, so was
but that
I,
was on the basis that Vladimir Putin had been repeatedly saying that he intended to invade
he was saying it long before. But look,
why did he intend to invade it? Because he thinks that Ukraine is part of Russia, was part of the Soviet Union. He wants it back in. He's an imperial wannabe emperor, and that is the only reason he invaded that country. It's got nothing to do with the fact that this country wanted to join a trading bloc.
I'm with you on that, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. Just a couple of other stories I just want to really briefly mention. It's hilarious. Well, it's hilarious apart from the fact that, I mean, this is taxpayers funded money. And the deep side tells you everything. A taxpayer funded project is set to research the connection between milk and colonialism. Academics at an Oxford museum, I kid you not, is this the same museum as the one that won't let me go and see a mask because I'm a woman? No, it's the History of Science Museum in Oxford. They've got the funding based, I don't know what the grant is for, but basically milk is a Northern European obsession, but it's been imposed on other parts of the world by our colonialism. Milk was a key part of the human diet, is an assumption, and may be understood as a white supremacist one, as many populations outside Europe and North America have high levels of lactose intolerance. So the new project is called Milking It, Colonialism, Heritage and Everyday Engagement with Dairy. I mean, it's won funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council. That's your and my money. I mean, these people are insane. Do they have nothing better to do with their time?
Look, these grants are worth about £100,000.
Yeah.
That is the tax receipts of about 6 to 7 people. 6 to 7 people worked all year
to pay for that.
They were taxed through the teeth to fund some nonsense wannabe lunatic to masquerade
race grifter
to push and peddle this nonsense. They've made the world worse by writing this. They should have. We would have been better off if this had never been done, and yet everybody had to suffer in order to fund it.
I mean, well, every time I have rice, am I being colonised? I don't know. I don't understand. It's the other way around. Just finally, Euro's still ongoing. Scotland, though, out. I mean, 12 attempts in the group stages of a major tournament. 12 times they've not made it out of the group stage. You're smiling too much. Shame on you.
Well,
Jim White over in at TalkSport is gutted.
Look, I'm afraid that every time I have to see the SNP lot go off, I do get a chuckle. Maybe now though, Keir Starmer can wear an England shirt to watch.
Good point, as opposed to the white shirt, indeed.